Hello, and welcome to a demonstration video about Aqua Data Studio and really how to get started, right? How to download, install, activate, and then connect to a database and dive in and let you start using the product. If you are brand new to Aqua Data Studio, Aqua Data Studio is a productivity software for database developers, DBAs, analysts, really anyone that needs to connect to a database and work with data. So we'll introduce the site in this presentation, but I just wanted to maybe start there if you're hearing about the product for the first time. Okay, so I have some PowerPoint slides to go through. Then we'll actually run through the installation. And then, ultimately, the product is a productivity tool to let you do your job. And so you'll have a configured environment in terms of where you're connecting to and different color coding menus, and again, allowing you to move quickly in terms of getting to data and taking actions on your data or working in a database depending on your responsibilities. So this is what Aqua Data Studio might look like once you've started using the product. For the sake of this presentation, I'll step through and install in a new environment, and we'll go through an example of how to actually connect to a database. Okay, let me switch back to the PowerPoint slide and get started there. Okay, so the first slide here just is an overview of where to download Aqua Data Studio, and so you might be on the Aquafold site already. Otherwise, www.aquafold.com has easy links and downloads. There's also some support sites once you become familiar with the site. So basically different areas to download the executable, and we'll show some examples of that. Aqua Data Studio is a Java application, which means it can install on different operating systems, different client operating systems, right? So of course the Windows operating system is supported, but if you work on a Mac, that's fine. Aqua Data Studio can install on a Mac, even a Linux client. And then in terms of downloading, you'll have choices in terms of what executable you'd like to download. There's different versions for the different operating systems. And then I added the compressed selection there because you can run the product from a zip folder. So for perhaps consultants that might have limitations in terms of where they can install, that's a benefit in a productivity area within Aqua Data Studio. So very flexible in terms of where you can install and use the product. And this has been developed, for many years now. So these are areas that customers have helped us improve in terms of easily download, easily install, and let you dive in and start using the product. Okay, so we'll introduce some of these pages on the website, but there's just the parent page, www.aquafold.com, and you see the green boxes where you can easily download and install the product. It does install in seconds. We'll step through that example, but again, that's really one of the benefits is allowing you to quickly connect and then move forward and achieve your job responsibilities. So here's the download page that we'll look at. You can see the choices for Windows, Mac, or Linux. And then also wanted to point out here the side-by-side option, right? So if you have a previous version, you can install the new version without removing. That's fine. Or you can just choose to upgrade the existing installation directory. All right, so here's just the save as. We'll step through that where you can choose your directory path or the executable to save or run it on the fly. Pretty standard in terms of those choices there. And then again, once you're familiar with the site, you have some internal directories as well. Okay, so we'll actually run through these installation steps, but just to show what we're about to look at, probably half a dozen or so windows that you'll click through for the installation. Very familiar or standard types of installation windows. Choose where you're installing, what directory path, the shortcut menu on your desktop on the start menu. And then ultimately, that would create a desktop on your an icon on your desktop that you can launch by double clicking, or it would be in your your application menu as well. Okay, once you open the product for the first time, there's a couple of steps that is just a one-time only, right? So there's the concept of activating the license key. And so there's a trial evaluation for 2 weeks or 14 days, or you can plug in a license key. So if you have a license key, the next window here would show some of those choices. And then once you open the product, either an evaluation or commercial, you activate, right? And so that's just a window or step to point out here. You either click on the activate button and it activates that trial or the commercial version. But that needs the machine to be online, right? And so that's the concept to share in terms of activating. But there is this manual activate. So if you have a machine that's not online for different reasons or security reasons, there's a way to activate the license there as well. And so this is documented on the internal website or the Aquafold site where you can learn more about that. But basically, this is pretty straightforward. I don't want to overcomplicate things here. And then when you first open the product and activate the product, it will say, okay, you haven't connected to any databases yet. Would you like to register a server? And so that's some terminology even to share. Connect to a database is called register server here in Aqua Data Studio. And there's the server menu and the register server or clone server. And so we'll step through an example of these as well. All right, just another screenshot or two here. As you might expect, the very first icon on the main toolbar is connect to a database, right? So register server is the very first icon. And then there's the concept of grouping servers in some kind of a way that makes sense for you in terms of where you're responsible for, or naming conventions, so you have flexibility there in the server groups concept. And then again, we'll look at these within the live application, but here's an example of where you can connect to a database and choosing the database platform, and then seeing how those population boxes would vary in terms of what is needed to connect there. So a lot of effort and development's gone on to this window, and we'll look at examples there. And then this was connecting to a database. In this example, I'm highlighting the SQL Server selection. You have the ability to connect to Excel spreadsheets and work on that data as well. So that's a choice and maybe an example that we'll look at. So how to connect to a database, how to connect to an Excel spreadsheet or a directory that's holding your Excel data. And then, of course, there's import and export capabilities. So if you have data in Excel that you'd like to bring into a database, that's a core feature of Aqua Data Studio itself, but probably beyond the scope of what we'll look at here today. So today we'll look at just connecting to a database or connecting to your Excel data. All right, so here's the agenda that we'll go through. We'll introduce the website, and then I've downloaded the Windows executable, so we'll kick that off. We'll run through the install on Windows, which just takes a few seconds, and so we'll look at an example there. And then the activate, again, don't want to overcomplicate things. That's a window that'll prompt when you first open up the product. And so I think the screenshots will cover what I need to address there. And then there's ways of just talking to us with the link from the help licensing menu. And then last step there is, diving in, right? How do you connect? How do I populate my list of databases that I connect to? And then maybe a little more advanced is actually sharing a connection file. So if you had a colleague and you needed to share a connection file, or ultimately if you're managing different environments, the connection file is an easily configurable, transferable file that populates your connection information within Aqua Data Studio. Okay, so I had a supplemental slide with a little more details on that, but I don't want to overcomplicate things. So let's follow this agenda and take a look at how easy it is to install and connect with Aqua Data Studio. Okay, so let me switch over to my test environment. And again, just introducing the www.aquafold.com parent page. So there's a green box where you can download Aqua Data Studio from here. Or if you'd like more information about Aqua Data Studio, here's the product page that has some summary information and then links and screenshots and more details. Here's a list of all the databases that we connect to and how it installs. So that's available for you to visit. And then here I've set up some other tabs maybe to talk through as well. So click on the Start for Free, and then you'll be prompted to populate just some information about who you are, but this, this can be remembered, so you don't have to populate it each time. And then ultimately you'll choose, which executable you'd like to download, and then, where you're either saving that or running that on the fly. So this should be pretty straightforward, and again, a lot of effort and development has gone into this over the years, and so this really works well, and it's, as it says, a tool that downloads and installs within seconds, and then we'll dive into how to connect and use the product. And then, this is all documented as well, right? So just from the product page, you can see documentation here, and then, all of these steps are documented very well. So if you're curious about having, more detailed information on these steps, it's very easily found within the Aqua Data Studio documentation. Okay, so again, I have a couple of areas that I've set up for this presentation. So I've downloaded the product. So here's the executable that I'll kick off. And then here I have a directory where I have a few files that I'll work with after the install. So here's some Excel data and then some saved connection files that we'll take a look at. But let's start by just running the executable. So if I just double click on this executable that I downloaded, that will step me through the install wizard, and again some of the screenshots that were in the PowerPoint will be duplicated right here. So choose your language, and then I'll accept the license agreement here in terms of evaluation or some of the details there, but pretty standard. Are you updating an existing installation or installing in a new directory? So you might expect that type of option, and we showed that on the screenshot within the PowerPoint as well. So I'll choose to install in a new directory for this example, and then again, where you're installing, you have choices there, so you could choose a different directory path, but there's the directory name, the Aqua Data Studio, and the version of the product. And then again, some naming conventions in terms of your start menu, your desktop icon, and within a few seconds the product installs, and then you can open it up and dive in. So how easy is that? And so that's really one of the strengths of Aqua Data Studio that hopefully you'd expect in a 15-year product, right? Very easy to download, easy to install. Let me dive in and start using the product to perform my job responsibilities. Okay, so I'll click Finish there, and then here's an example of the icon, so I'll just keep it here on the left in case I don't maximize the screen here, but double click on the Aqua Data Studio icon and the product will open up. So you'll see the splash screen as it's opening, and then I have two existing connections, so those wouldn't exist until you first open up the tool, but otherwise really a clean install here, and this would be similar to what your environment would look like as well. So you won't have any databases listed until you connect, and so this would probably be the starting screen. But then I did, tie in with the PowerPoint slides the help licensing. So help license would open up, and then you either choose evaluation or the activation icon there that we showed in the PowerPoint. Okay, so to connect to a database, it's the very first icon, right? If you hover over, you'll see the register server, or server, register server, or right click on local database servers and register server. Okay, so different ways as you become familiar with the product, whatever's quickest for you, but server, register server now shows that alphabetical list of where we can connect, right? And so this list continues to grow. We have different versions of these platforms, and so there's probably even more than the list here if you separated each version of different database platforms, for example. But as you choose a different database server, notice the text boxes would change, right? So this is where there's been a lot of effort and development into the product. Here I could choose, say, Amazon Redshift, or say DB2, or say SQL Server. So notice what is needed and the requirements for that connection. The development's already there for you. So you don't have to figure out what is needed for each platform. It's listed here for you. And then there's different ways of cloning these connections that we'll talk about here in a moment. But you know, just you can explore this list and see how some of this information varies. But maybe for the sake of this presentation, let's add a Oracle connection. I have a couple of SQL Server connections. So ultimately, you know, you could explore right now where you're currently connected to. But for this example, let me click on Server, Register Server, and choose, say, an Oracle connection. And so you'd need some of this information ahead of time, but let me just start to populate this database connection window within Aqua Data Studio. So I'll call this my Oracle connection. You have just a customization here in terms of what type of box is that. Is that a development or test box? So really just a way for you to recognize, here's say a color coding that you could choose. So again, just flexible customizations to help you move more productively, right? A visual representation might help you keep track of different environments you're in. So, you know, that's customizable. Here I'll choose red for Oracle maybe. And then, you know, choose how you're connecting. So you'd have either an existing user provided to you by your DBA, and then, you know, hopefully you'd know some of the server information about where that resides. But, you know, this is where you might need, say, an IP address or some more detailed information about the servers that you're connecting to. And so in this case, I'll populate what Oracle needs. And so here, one of the Oracle specifics is the Oracle SID. And then I can test that, right? So test that connection. Green is good, obviously, right? So here it's saying, okay, the connections, accepting the socket connections, your user password is correct. But if this, you know, if this was incorrect, you'd see a specific message there, right? So here, if I say I had an incorrect password, it's saying, okay, the connection's open, but user password didn't like that. So it really saves you time. Okay, what is needed here? What do I need to figure out in terms of what's needed for this connection? And then, of course, the ability to save that and have that that step saved for you, where you don't have to step through this connection window each time. So let me test that again. Okay, good. Green check boxes. Close that. And now I can save this. And now that's been added to my list of servers where I've previously connected. And then I have different ways of grouping and starting to build this server connection list. Okay, so we started with some SQL Server connections I already had. Then I stepped into an example of connecting to Oracle. Let's maybe look at how to connect to my Excel data. Right, so here if I choose Microsoft Excel, notice it doesn't have a, say, user password. It's just asking for the directory path. So what folder is holding your Excel files, right? What is the map drive that is the location of these Excel files? So again, you'd name this connection here. So maybe I'll just call this Excel, for example. You know, again, these are just customizations here. Maybe I'll give this green for Excel. Okay, so just flexibility, customizations you can make for your own world. And then here in this case, it's asking, okay, where is the path for those Excel files? So, you know, here I could just point to a local folder, or if it was a map drive, right? Or maybe I work with colleagues, and so, you know, you have flexibility here in terms of thinking of how you might leverage this area to connect to, say, a shared Excel environment. Maybe test that just to make sure everything's working okay with Microsoft, and then say save that. And now my Excel path is listed. And so, you know, if I was to say explore these environments, right, here's my Oracle environment where I can drill into schemas and see my schemas and then objects, or in this case tables under a schema. If I was in SQL Server, I could drill into, say, my databases and then see my tables under databases. And so for Excel, I drill into Excel and then it's listed under databases, but there's this folder that I created for this demonstration, right, where I have some Excel data. And so it's just reading those Excel files from that directory. And then I'd have the ability to, you know, explore or navigate that data as though it's a database table, right? Okay, so The other core window that you'll start with is the query analyzer. So that's maybe beyond the scope of what we're talking about today, but if I was to say open up a query analyzer, or if I right click and say open up a query analyzer against these different environments, then I could just start, say, typing or running select against, say, that specific spreadsheet or data set, right? So here, if I was in, say, my SQL Server environment, I could right click, open up a query analyzer, and then I have my connection to, say, a SQL Server environment, right? Or if I was in Oracle, I could right click, open up a query analyzer against Oracle, and now I see, some of those color-coded differences there, right? Or if I just started typing away here, you can start moving forward in terms of, working with the tables and some of the pop-up windows that you'd expect or be looking for in your local database environments. Okay, so don't want to get too deep in terms of how to use the product. We'll probably have other videos there. So hopefully this allowed you to jumpstart, maybe dive in, start using the product in terms of connecting to different environments by the server, register server, very first icon, or the server, register server menu. And then a little bit of an advanced area in terms of connecting that I thought would be helpful here, but didn't want to confuse anybody, is that these connections are saved as a connection file, and that's a shareable file to populate, say, another install of Aqua Data Studio, or perhaps populate these connection areas for another user where they would just need to then enter, say, their user and password, right? Okay, so let me just be a little more specific there. So here I have a few different Explorer folders open, and so one of them is a path to my connections folder. Okay, so Aqua Data Studio installs into a user directory, right? And then there's the Data Studio folder and the connections folder, right? So here you can even see. So I'm looking at this connections folder and see how this matches my existing connections, right? So I see that Excel connection I just created, those existing SQL Server connections, there's an Oracle connection, right? So here's what I wanted to show you. You could share this connection file, right? So here's this installation directory where I have some saved connection files, right? So let me copy this MySQL connection file. Just going to right click, say copy, and now paste that here into my Aqua Data Studio connections file. Right click, paste. And now I'll refresh this connection list within Aqua Data Studio and see that connection populated for me. So I can here refresh this list, and now there's that MySQL connection file that I just copy and pasted, right? Okay, so maybe that was a little bit advanced in terms of that last step. So I think you can pause and rewind this to see more details on that. But this is important when you're dealing with a lot of connections. The ability to just quickly copy this .conn file into an existing Data Studio connections directory really is a time saver and allows collaboration for, say, large number of users of Aqua Data Studio. Okay, so again, just to maybe switch back to what we covered here. So we introduced where to download the product. It installs on different operating systems. There's a quick activation step, and then very easy to dive in and connect to either a database, or an Excel spreadsheet, or even share that connection file. Okay. And then again, ultimately, a robust environment will have a history of connections. You can have server groups, and really just, again, a way for you to be as productive as possible, meaning saving time, saving clicks through a database tool or productivity software for different job responsibilities, right? So Aqua Data Studio is the type of product that is used by developers, DBAs, analysts, really any IT professional that needs to connect to a database and work with data. Okay, thanks for joining. Look for more video presentations on how to become more efficient with Aqua Data Studio. Thanks for joining, everybody. Bye.